What can you actually capture in 1 hour of street photography? Today, I'm testing myself with Portra 400, a £50 rangefinder, and I'm heading to the heart of London, Soho and Chinatown. So to give you a little bit more information on why I've chosen the Canon QL19 Portra 400 and why I've come to Soho, Chinatown area. So basically, the Canonet QL is a brilliant little rangefinder. It's really good value, and actually I'm going to go into more detail about this later. But obviously, you need a camera. This is a great choice. We're going to go with Portra 400 because clearly it's an unbelievable film stock. 400 is a great speed. It's a bit cloudy and miserable today. Possibly might rain, which is suboptimal. But 400 speed gives me a lot of variety in a number of sort of lighting conditions. And the reason why I've come to Soho and Chinatown is because it's a super popular area in London to shoot. So it'd be good to show you guys that. And actually, I'm going to give you a few little tips and tricks along the way. So we're going to start in Chinatown, hence the nice Chinatown B-roll. Chinatown is a great place to shoot, but there's a few things to take into consideration. It's very busy, so coming Sunday at 12:30 is probably not the best time to come, but it is what it is. But there are great characters, loads of tourists, which mean you get a nice variety of character. The light is great, especially at sunset. When it's wet and rainy, it is brilliant. It's a great place to shoot. Loads of umbrellas, steamy windows, it's fantastic. The one thing I would say is it's very small. Everyone expects it to be bigger, but it's literally 2 streets, and that is literally it. You've got a couple of like little mini alleyways off it, but that is literally it. Still, it's worth shooting. It's a great place to shoot. So without further ado, I suppose we should probably get started. Right, halfway through the film, in fact, a tiny little bit over. So I'm going to give you a quick in-person, real-time analysis of how it's gone to this point, and then we'll go home before we kick off the second half to kind of go through the photos in a little bit more detail. But a little bit fast off the blocks, 20 minutes or 22 minutes in, and I'm over halfway through the roll, so that's okay. It is what it is. You do get a bit keen. I'm timing myself an hour. It's quite a short amount of time to try and do a roll of film. Probably got a little bit keen, a little bit eager to go straight off the block, but hopefully the images are okay. I feel like there might be one or two okay ones in there. Obviously focus might be an issue. I haven't used this that many times, so I'm still getting used to this. I do enjoy using it. However, I did have a bit of an issue. A couple of the rolls or a couple of the images might not have wound properly. So it was like cracking as I wound it for two of the images. So what I did is I put a little bit of pressure here and then wound it, and that sort of fixed the issue. That's the quirks of using these cameras. They're old and sometimes not always the most reliable. But if that's the only problem I've got with it, then we're all good. But yeah, let's go home now and analyse these photos in a little bit more detail before we then kick off the next part of the POV. Right, I'm not going to pretend those photos are anything particularly special, but I'm going to select one or two that I do like. Firstly, we have this photo of these guys sort of just sitting and chilling. It's not the world's greatest photo, but I do like the primary colours in here. You've got a tiny bit of yellow, but you've got quite a nice amount of blue and red. Same with this image here. You've got lots of blue, lots of red, which I quite like. So again, it's not the greatest photo, it's slightly out of focus, but I do like the scene. The next photo I want to talk about is the picture with the guy's face. This one is maybe not the most glamorous photos, but it's real, and that's kind of what I like to capture, real stuff. This is the beauty of having a rangefinder. I essentially set it to, I think, somewhere between 1 meter and 1.5 meters, and then as I approached him, I just tried to compose the image as best I could, and there we have it. I actually quite like this image as well. You've got quite a sort of Malanogas color palette here. Everything's kind of very beige. You've got the yellow, which is kind of a beigey color anyway. And then you've also got that black to accent it. I think it's quite a nice image. And that's probably about as good as it got in that first half. It is very difficult. We are trying to do something that most people would not recommend, which is shooting a roll of film in an hour. Most people say slow down and take your time, and most of the time I do agree with that. However, sometimes it's good to test ourselves, push ourselves out of our comfort zone and try and capture as many good things as possible. You've got to think about it as sort of upskilling, because what you've got to do is you've got to think fast, look out for lots of different things because you are under time pressure. So it kind of alerts your senses, and that's kind of essentially why I do this. Well, that, and hopefully it's entertaining for you. But before I blabber on too much, let's go to the second half of this roll. Right, so the GoPro clapped out on me. Not sure what happened because it did record to the end because I was checking it. But then when I stopped the GoPro, I don't know what happened. It was doing some weird thing, so I don't know whether it just didn't save the last few sections or whatnot. I don't know, because it recorded half of it and then not the second half. But ultimately, you want to know how long it took me to do the roll of film, and it was over an hour. I think in the end it was about 1 minute. No, sorry, 1 hour and 12 minutes. So I did fail my task. I don't really know what happened, to be honest, because I was absolutely flying and I started to slow down to try and take more time over my shots because I did have so much time, and just nothing was happening in front of me. I was just walking and then there was just nothing going on. So eventually I finished in Soho and then went back to Chinatown, sort of as a full circle to finish with. But I'll flash the images up now so you can see. So the second half of that roll of film is done. I might have had a slight issue with the GoPro. You'll know I won't. My thoughts are that it went okay, not great. Would like to have maybe got some better shots in there. I don't think there was anything particularly special. I will go into a bit more detail in the shots overall from the roll of film at home. But yeah, and my initial thoughts are that it went okay, not great. And it's kind of the beauty with film, you don't know until you've actually got the images back. So yeah, basically, you'll know, I won't. So I do want to go through a little bit of information on Soho, give you some sort of tips on when's good, what's bad, all that sort of thing. But before we do that, cue the B-roll. Soho then. Right, firstly, it's very busy at the weekends. Very, very busy. In fact, it's busy all the time, but it's especially busy at the weekends, which has its good things and bad things. Obviously, it makes it easier to sort of kind of blend in a little bit more, but also it can be a bit crowded. So if you're looking for isolated figures, it's probably not going to happen. My advice for Soho is that it's good during the day. It was quite dull today, shooting today, but it doesn't matter too much because you get natural light off, sort of bouncing off the buildings, and you get natural light from the buildings. So in that regard, you're sort of okay. It's a wicked place to shoot at night. It's slightly better, in my opinion, than Chinatown, just because you get a bit more light. In fact, there's loads of light. And it makes for some really interesting photos. I definitely would recommend that. Shoot it at night. Obviously, you're going to have to go with a high ISO film, or you're going to have to go with, a fast ISO film, or you're going to have to go with maybe a digital camera, dare I say it. But there is enough light for you to be able to shoot 800, possibly even 400, depending on what type of thing you like to shoot, ISO. The other thing I'd say is it's quite big. In fact, it's very big. It's much bigger than you think. So explore and go wide, go all the way up to Oxford Street, Tottenham Court Road area, and then sort of wiggle your way down. There's lots of like back alleys and nooks and crannies. So when you're shooting, make sure you're walking everywhere. That's enough chat from me. So we're gonna take it home. We'll go through the roll of film, dissect it a little bit, see what I did well, what I didn't do well. We'll talk through the Canonet QL, cool little camera, can be picked up at a bargain price. Great way to get into rangefinder system. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll go through it in a little bit more detail, go through the images in a bit more detail, and that'll be it. So see you back at the studio. Obviously, the second half of the roll did take me a lot longer, but I did get, I think, better shots. I think that quite often happens. You kind of get into a roll when you're shooting. First half of the film, sort of roll of film, you're kind of like warming yourself up. The second half is usually better. I don't know if it's just me that finds that. Maybe you come flying straight out of the blocks, but it takes me a bit of time to warm up. So first off is this photo, which I like, and it was literally taken as soon as I'd pressed play. I saw this dude and I was like, oh, yeah, I like that. Same position as the photo before, just obviously a little bit later. Nice character, cigarette in mouth. Simple but effective. And next up is this woman wearing a hat. As you can see, it's not the most exciting photo, but I like the fact, basically I saw her across the street and I saw that she was wearing the beige hat. And I knew that I could frame her on a third with the other beige sort of colors all around her. And you got this little kind of splash of green in the bottom corner, which I also quite like. So the next photo I want to look at is this one, very briefly, because it's nothing too exciting, but this dude is a cool looking dude. I love his outfit. Again, you've got that red, which you do get a lot of in Chinatown and Soho, which is where this one is shot. He's wearing sort of blue dungarees. He looks cool, which brings me nicely onto this next photo, because this next photo has another cool dude in it, and that's originally what I was going to shoot. And then I saw that this woman was in the background doing something, so I was going to get them both. And then other people walked into the frame, as you can see, and it sort of told a bit more of a story. In hindsight, I wish I'd shot it a landscape actually, because it would have got a bit more context in, because I'm sort of cutting off, well, I am cutting off the woman on the left. But still, I like the photo, but not as much as I like this photo, which is this woman who has a green book against a green wall. She's got some cool boots on, and she just looks cool, you know, and I just thought that was quite a cool scene. It's not often you see people reading these days, so I thought that was quite unique. I quite liked it, and she was cool looking, so yeah. That was a good photo, that one, I think. Next up is one of my favorite photos from the roll, possibly my favorite. I'm not 100%. Like I said, it wasn't the greatest roll of film in the world, but I really liked this photo because you had this quite cool graffiti, and obviously lots of people were walking through this pathway. And I saw a guy and a girl come in, and they were kind of like close, but not too close. And I thought, if I can time this well with a slow shutter, it will look quite cool with the eyes of that heart looking through. It happened that they were also wearing white and blue, which worked really well for the photo, so I was really happy with that. And next photo is this one, which is, I don't know why, but the light in this building is just class. Anyway, I'll show you and then you can see for yourself. It's not the world's most exciting photo. We have this woman who's clearly just dishing up some food, but the light just hits different as you go in through that window, and just lighting alone just makes me sort of want to highlight that particular photo. And last but not least, before we go into a little bit of information on the Canonet, is this photo here. It was literally the last one on the roll. I wasn't even 100% I was going to get it out, so I snapped it in hope more than anything, because when you get to the end, sometimes you can get an extra one out, sometimes you can't. And I was lucky enough that I got this photo, and it's just a cool scene. It's just a mum with a daughter perhaps, and yeah, I just thought that was quite cool to finish off the roll. Of the 38 images I got back, 4 of them failed to wind properly due to the issue I had with the Canonet. So to keep 30 isn't too bad, considering I was really trying to get through the roll of film as quickly as I could, obviously within the hour. So although it's not the world's greatest roll of film, I'm quite happy with 30 images, to be honest. And of the 30 images that I'd keep, these are the 16 that I would post. So make sure you follow me on Instagram at njm_flicks with 2 eyes, which you can find the link in the description, and you'll see those images probably over the next few days or weeks. And lastly, these are the 3 images I would print. Not the world's greatest roll of film, but I really liked the motion blur with the heart. I like the dude. I like the composition. It's a bit unusual as well, with the lines on the floor sort of pointing towards him. And I like the woman with the book. I think she's a cool character. Overall, 30 images I was quite happy with. The reality is none of the images are amazing, but these are the 3 that I would probably print. Onto the Canonet QL19 then. I am gonna break this section down into 4 sections, and I will be brief and I will be concise as much as I can. I do have a habit of talking too much. But basically, this Canonet was released in the 60s, and it's a really cool little camera, a bit of a legend of the Canon range. And the QL stands for quick load, which is basically a clever system that Canon introduced that makes loading 35mm film so much faster and more reliable. And you can usually get a couple of extra shots out of it, which is always a bonus. It has a 45mm 1.9 aperture lens, which is quite sharp, I would say. And obviously 1.9 gives you great versatility in low light situations. It can be used fully manual or with a shutter priority. I actually shot all of these shots today in shutter priority, but you can use it fully manually, which is obviously a brilliant feature. The light meter does not work when you take it off shutter priority though, just to pre-warn you. Essentially, it is compact, quiet, it's pretty lightweight, and is perfect for street photography. For those of you who care about the tech, and I know that there are people out there who definitely will, we'll go through the camera bit by bit. First of all, we'll start with the lens. It's a 45mm 1.9 Canon lens with 6 elements in 4 groups. The shutter has a leaf shutter, which is perfect for street photography. It's super quiet, with speeds from a 1/4 to 500th of a second, and bulb. The aperture goes from 1.9 to 16, which shows you on the lens. It's a 35mm film camera with that quick load system we talked about. The focus is a manual rangefinder focus with a minimum focus distance about 0.8, which it does also say on the lens. So the viewfinder for this camera is pretty bright, to be fair, and has parallax correction, which basically means that it's got lines on the viewfinder for when you're close in. Because if you use your whole viewfinder when you're composing a photo and you're quite tight to your subject, you're not going to get the same image back when it's been developed. And lastly, the battery that this uses is something called a PX265. If I'm wrong, I'll write it down here, but it's a bit of a grey area, so I would recommend Googling this before you actually buy the camera. Next up, I want to talk about why I like this camera. Firstly, it's compact. It's got a good focal length at 45, which I think is pretty perfect for street photography. Obviously, a 1.9 aperture is helpful for low light situations. The quick load system is brilliant. It usually gives you a couple of extra shots in your roll. And also, if you're a beginner, it makes the loading so quick. And for street photography, it is so quiet, it becomes a lot less intrusive. People aren't aware that you've taken a photo half the time, which can always be a good thing, especially when you're taking photos on the tube, for example. But in terms of the best thing about this camera for street photography is the focusing is so small. Obviously with rangefinders, this sort of very tight focus range, I suppose, is very easy to quickly compose your image when things in the street are moving really fast. So that probably is the best thing about using a rangefinder, and this camera specifically, over an SLR. So price and recommendation then. I picked this particular camera up for £45, which is a ridiculous deal. I picked it off eBay, and if you look on eBay, you can still pick these cameras up for under 100 quid, maybe 150 quid. Obviously, that is ridiculous. If you're getting into photography, it is a brilliant camera because the price point is cheap. The quick load system makes it super easy. And if you're just sort of getting used to street photography, that shutter is ridiculous and helps you be more invisible on the street, which can only be a good thing. So yes, I'd 100% recommend it. The price, the setup, the lens, everything is really good. It is a brilliant camera to get into photography. So if you have lasted all the way to the end of this video, you are a legend. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please hit that like button because it does make a big difference. And subscribe because we're going to be doing more videos exactly like this, different cameras, different rolls of film, and the adventures in film photography continue. So hope you can join me on that journey. Till the next one, peace. Look at that, man. That is a cool looking camera. 50 quid to look this good, take decent photos. What more could you want?